if this off-planet vehicle is real, right? Like they're like, oh, this has been made. This is not made on this Earth, type of thing. What are they going to do about these other cases once they open up? Are they going to investigate them and say, yes, this too is now an off-planet type of thing? So I wanted to go through this case. I feel like this has a lot of details, and you as the audience can kind of digest it because there's so many. But this one's really interesting because it does involve the U.S. government, and it does involve not Navy pilots, but U.S. soldiers, and we can figure out what you think is true.
Let's go deep.
Right.
Let's do this.
Okay. Rendlesham Fort, and I'm just going to go through some bullet points if you've never heard the story before. So December 26th and 27th of 1980. This happened in the Rendlesham Forest, which is between two U.S. air bases, Woodridge and Bentwaters. This is on the England's east coast. Just after midnight on December 26th, eyewitnesses and radar screens followed an unidentified object as it vanished into the forest. Soldiers were dispatched to the site and they encountered a luminous triangle-shaped craft, 10 feet across, 8 feet high, with 3 legs. The UFO then retracted the legs and easily maneuvered its way through the trees. The soldiers chased it into a field where it abruptly shot upward, shining brilliant lights down on them. At that moment, the witnesses lost consciousness. When they came to, they were back in the forest. Other troops sent to rescue them found tripod landing marks where the object apparently had rested. So the following night, the 27th, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, who's part of the story, decided to go out into the forest to investigate it himself because the soldiers were pretty shook up. He measured the abnormal radiation of the area. He also measured the spots where the triangle pod had landed. And then his group saw some weird lights as well. So Lieutenant Colonel Halt, if you look into this case, he records himself live in the field. You can hear his tape. You can see all of his memos that he sent to Congress and to his base. He seems like a pretty sound guy. Like, he's not making this story up. But the two people that were really affected by this case were Jem Peniston and James Burrow. And these were the first U.S. Air Force officers to be in the field, and they were the ones that were in contact with this triangle craft. So let me read the first witness, John Burroughs. His
Big
witness
Dick
statement.
Burroughs.
Big Dick Burroughs.
I don't know why I did that in there. I'm pretty sure that's listed as his nickname in the official documents of this.
I love that, like, I'm really serious, and then in the middle of it, you just drop Big Dick. You, like, literally just drop it.
Couldn't help
As
it.
soon as I said it, I go, what am I doing? Like, this is me? Like, I'm just forcing in a dick joke. Like, stop.
It's a form of Tourette's. It's okay.
It's okay. I was getting a little serious. Okay. Let me read. Witness statement published 1981. The woods lit up, and you could hear the farm animals making a lot of noise. You could see the lights down by the farmer's house. On the forest edge, we climbed over the fence and started walking toward the red and blue lights, and then they disappeared. The U.S. officer, Jem Peniston, who was also with Burroughs during this incident, he got close to the craft where he saw some hieroglyphic-like characters on the craft itself. He says, I estimated it to be about 3 meters tall, about 3 meters wide at the base. No landing gear was apparent, but it seemed like she was on fixed legs. I moved a little closer. I walked around the craft, and finally I walked right up to the craft. I noticed the fabric of the shell was more like a smooth, opaque black glass, and then I put my hand on it.
Ooh, dangerous. Put your hand on it.
I know.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do that. That's like that part. That's the part of the movie where you don't do that, but apparently in real life you do that.
Don't go into the murder basement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so this really isn't recorded. You know, I had to revisit this case because I covered this case a long time ago on Ancient Aliens and several other shows. And I looked and I didn't see the other part that I'm about to tell you, but I know it's on a couple shows.
Did you go to Rendlesham?
I didn't go to Rendlesham, but in 2010 they wanted to open the case back up. So we agreed on the History Channel to send them all back for like a reunion to go back into the woods, see if they remembered anything. We did hypnotherapy. They sat on a panel. They like did the investigation. They walked us through this whole thing. But
wait, who wanted to open it up again? The
Ancient
people
Aliens.
involved?
Ancient
I see.
Aliens.
Okay.
Yeah, they did a whole documentary on it. That company that did Ancient Aliens did a whole documentary on it. But they wanted to find a new angle on the story, and so I remembered in the police or the reports for the base that Jim Peniston, who was the closest, wrote down the hieroglyphs, and he had a notebook. He said he came back and he couldn't sleep, and he felt like he had all these numbers in his head, and so he has like this notebook. I remember this is an important point because the notebook specifically, I had the notebook dated. So the notebook is like an old notebook, like a notebook you would have in school, but it was a specific style that somebody confirmed was only from the 1980s. So, meaning he couldn't have like drawn this shit later and said, "Oh, by the way, I wrote this down after the experience in December 26th, 1980." Anyway, so I asked him, "Can I have your notebook?" And in the notebook was literally 6 or 7 pages of zeros and ones, like a binary code, basically.
Shit.
Huh.
And I'm like, no one has ever reported on this. So I asked my boss if he just give me like $1,000 and I was going to try to investigate the binary code. And he said, okay, whatever, who cares? So this is 2010. So it's not that you can't find computer programmers, but I wanted to find a gamer, some random kid I found in like Minneapolis. And I was like, "Hi, my name is Melissa. I didn't use my work account. I'm like, I have this like written notebook pages that I scanned of zeros and ones, and I'm wondering if you could decode it for me." He didn't know who I was. He didn't know why I was asking. He even asked me, he's like, "Is there a point to this?" And I'm like, "Just tell me what it says." And when he decoded it, it was a coordinates, and it said something like, "We come to Earth to give a message." And then there was a coordinates. And he's like, "Do you know what this is for? Like, I just don't understand like why it says this. Is it for a game?" And I'm like, "No, never mind. Thank you."
Just forget everything you saw.
And because he's like, it's a coordinates. And so I looked up the coordinates, and it was off the coast of Ireland. And when I researched it more, it was the mythology of that specific location is called High Brazil, and that is like their Atlantis story. So there's like a sunken island right there. Isn't that weird?
Wow,
Just
that's
random.
interesting.
Just random. And I thought, like, it's not that I'm disrespecting Jim Peniston, but he's not the smartest dude. So for the guy to like write zeros and ones and somehow come up with some code that said, "We come here with a message," and then give a coordinates, like, I honestly don't know why.
I wish
he
I
would
was
do
like
that.
an eccentric billionaire and I could just fly out there right now and like scuba dive right down, Because is this an island that's still above water, or is this sunken, you said?
No, it's sunken. But if you look, if you listen to this podcast and you look up, because High Brazils is the mythical name. It's like literally an Atlantis story, like this island with all these enlightened beings, like sunk.
Oh, I love it. I'm Irish, so I just love it that like Ireland is connected to Atlantis. It just makes me extra happy. Keep going.
You're like, yes. But if you look, you could see that there's some reef or something below there. It's not just ocean.
Cool.
There's definitely like a landmass of some sort. So anyway, that we put that in the show, but that like somehow got thrown out. Like Linda Moulton Howe followed up on it, and she was mad that I came out with it before she did, and so she got the same message, but she changed it a little bit, and I don't know, but whatever. It was already out there, and it was done so randomly without people like that guy who had no idea of what I was doing. He was just some random computer programmer.
Right.
That I paid.
Yeah.
Man, that's weird.
What are the odds,
what's his name? Peniston. So he got this message after everything had taken place and he was back at the barracks or whatever. He kept seeing this message in his head. Is that right?
Yeah, so what he reports is he put his hand on the craft and it's like literally his mind turned into a database, like with zeros and ones.
Huh. So the craft was conscious.
Yeah, and so he went back to, when he got back to his place, he just couldn't stop thinking about it, so he just wrote them down. And he's like, once I wrote them down, I stopped thinking about them. And they never came back in his mind. And so I can't remember who the person was, but I had somebody look at his notebook. Is this a notebook from 1980 or is this a notebook from 2009? was it something he
Weird.
literally wrote in 1980?
Oh, okay. Well, let's just back up for a second. Let's just speculate here. So let's just say that really came from the craft, and that message was real.
Mm-hmm.
Some intelligent race or some being or something gave that message. Like, why? So then we have to say, is that island really connected to Atlantis? So what is the point of that message then? Is that to point us to our true past? Is that to point us that our past is a lot richer than we think it is? Like, why would it go out of its way to give them that message? There could be anything. You could tell a human anything or nothing. Like, it went out of its way to say that. So that island is significant in some sort of way. It feels like a bigger deal than I don't know. Like, I don't know. That just perplexes me. That feels like we should be looking to our past. We should be exploring like where we're truly from. We should get dirty in the dirt, digging in the dirt.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, in the movie Arrival, they have that one woman go in, and everyone tries to figure out what the aliens are saying, and she figures out a way to speak to them. Right? I feel like they can't just come here and say, "This is why we're here." Right? We don't even believe a New York Times article, right? And it's supposed to be really respectable. So it doesn't matter if they come here and they're like, "Hi, we come in peace." Everybody's like, "Holy shit, no, they don't. They're just trying to manipulate us," right? They're like,
fake news.
Get back in your craft. Nobody cares about your shit. We're not wearing a mask, okay? Yeah. So I feel like if that's true, if all of this is true, and it just was so random. Like the whole situation, how it all came together was just so random that, and I know that I'm being biased because I worked on it, but it just to this day, there's got to be something real about it. I feel like that's their way of giving a message. Like, here, if you look here and you find it yourself, you will know that we exist or something exists or there's something that we want to tell you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's weird. So that I looked up a
perfect.
bunch of Rendlesham stuff today, and that whole story of the binary code from Peniston is... Sorry, I just focused on the word penis in his name there, and I got all flustered.
What is wrong with you guys?
You're getting red in the face.
It was an accident. I was trying to hold it in. Don't do a dick joke. Don't do a chick joke.
You can't even say dick.
Anyway,
Okay,
so
go on.
But that whole story really doesn't come up anywhere
I know.
else. Was this just...
It,
Especially with, and what I guess we're...
Wait, what do you mean? What story? What do you mean? The idea that someone got a download of information? That story
Yeah.
that happens all the time.
I remember reading that.
Contactee experiences.
No,
just
Josh. We're talking about specifically for this. It's been
Rendlesham.
erased. They erased that part of the story.
I remember
I'm gonna
hearing
calm
that,
down.
and maybe it was just from talking to you, Melissa, but I don't remember seeing that anywhere else. Like that I've written, that I've researched into the Rendlesham Forest incident story.
Yeah, they erased it.
That doesn't come up at all.
They erased it, and Linda Moulton-Howe even worked on it, and she, like I said, she was mad because I came out with it before she did. And we put it in the show. So, I mean, it's in an Ancient Aliens episode, so if you go in Ancient Aliens, Rendlesham there. But it also was put in a book, and I'm not sure if it was Colonel Halt's book or Peniston's book, but I know Linda did a massive report on it, and it was part of like a documentary she was working on. But it's like, but all the other reports has just been kind of erased. So it's just interesting. And then of course, Matt, you came across. Oh, by the way, I love Nick Redfern, but he came up with a totally different view of what happened in the forest, correct?
He did, yeah. So I think it's his most recent book, within a couple of months anyway. It's got a crazy long title. It's called The Rendlesham Forest UFO Conspiracy. A close encounter exposed as a top secret government experiment. So Nick basically shits all over this whole idea. Sort of. He comes up with this pretty compelling theory. I'm not sure I'm completely on board with everything that he says.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty out there. But let's cut to a break real quick, and when we come back, we'll talk all about it.
All right, Matt, break down this ridiculousness.
Okay. Love Nick Redfern. Love his stuff. He's one of the best researchers, authors in the field, and in my opinion, super thorough. And not to say that his theory isn't really good. Like, he has some, and I must preface this by saying I haven't read the book. I'm basing this on